and sleep. Though nothing will keep us together. We can beat them forever and ever. Oh, we can be heroes just for one day.
Hello, everybody. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever in the world it is that you are connecting from today. Happy Monday, everybody. Thank you so much for being here as part of our Hacking HR live chat series. We've had over the past 3 months or so an incredible amount of wonderful and powerful conversations with brilliant, talented authors who are coming to our show to share insights and ideas and recommendations with you, with me, with our entire community of HR leaders and professionals here in Hacking HR. If you are connected live right now in any of our social media channels, please let us know where you are connecting from. It would be awesome to know where everybody's connecting from. So please just post it in the chat. If you have any questions during this conversation, I also encourage you all to post your questions, your comments, your ideas in the chat. I am reading you. If you're connected live, I have the chat right on my right, on the right of my screen here. So I'm going to try to read your comments, your questions, your ideas as well. If you are watching the replays, well, thank you so much for doing so. If any of you have missed any of the previous sessions that we've had as part of our Hacking HR live chat series, just go to our website, hackinghr.io. There's a link that says live chats, and you will find incredible conversations. All the videos are posted in there, just as they are from the live sessions, meaning we don't do any editing. You will feel a little bit of a live sort of a vibe in the conversations that are posted on our website. So please go there and check it out. So we are recording this on May 1st, or we are doing this on May 1st. Last Friday of last week, we had a session, and it was called Loving Mondays, Hating Fridays. And I know it's kind of a weird name that I picked for that session, but the subtitle of the session was How to Create Superb Cultures that people love, where people love to go to their workplaces and do the work that they need to do. And the reason why I called it loving Mondays and hating Fridays is because for the longest time ever, one of my being an entrepreneur myself, one of my favorite days of the week is Mondays because it's on Monday when I get to talk to so many people and do my work and whatever it is, right? As an entrepreneur, Mondays generally are very good days, and Fridays, which is when everybody goes back, to not do the work during the weekend, it's like, well, I don't have a lot of relationships to build during the weekend because, well, people are taking their time off, right? But when I talk to people who actually have full-time employment, and this was true for myself as well in the past, everybody on Sunday night was dreading to come to work on Monday. It was like, oh, damn, tomorrow is Monday. I don't want to go to work. I want this to be Friday. And I picked the title of that session to imply that it's possible to build work that people love, right? That it's possible for people to think, I want it to be Monday because it is in the work that I do, it is in my organization, with the people that I work with, my community of support, my network. It is through those avenues that I am growing, improving myself, being better. It's a creative outlet for my potential, for my talents. So therefore, Mondays are awesome days to do that, and Fridays are awful to do that because the weekend is coming. So I picked that title for that reason. And the conversation that we are going to have today, it's very, very much related to that. We are going to have a conversation about intrinsic motivation, learn to love your work and succeed as never before. This wasn't planned, by the way, because today's conversation, we only scheduled it a couple of weeks ago, but the conversation that we had on Friday had been scheduled for a couple of months. So I am loving that there's a connection in there. So I am very excited to welcome Stefan to the screen right now with me. Good morning, Stefan. How are you?
Good morning, Enrique. I'm fine. It's Monday, and I'm super happy. And a magnificent new week is opening up. All the opportunities to feel good about yourself and do fantastic things and blow your own mind and whatever. So
I
I'm super
love
fine.
that. Monday is such an awesome day. And before we get into talking about Monday or Friday and intrinsic motivation, Stefan, I would love for you to introduce yourself to our community. Please let us know more about who you are, the work you've done, and how or why you wrote this book on intrinsic motivation.
Hmm. Well, so I'm Stefan Falk, and I work as an executive coach. And basically say that I help people to achieve things that they didn't think they were capable of. And part of that is actually work with them so they understand how they can unlock their own intrinsic motivation for what they do. I think my journey started when I was 8 years old, when I got the piano from my mother, and I just fell in love with it. And a few years later, after I became really good at playing the piano, obviously my grades in school was not what they're supposed to be. So my future didn't look that great. And in a moment of very rare brilliance on my end, I basically asked myself, what if I can figure out what makes piano so extraordinary to engage in, playing, and then apply that, for instance, to school? And I started to think about that, and I actually think that I was 12 back then, and that moment and those thoughts and what the conclusions I arrived at, I think has shaped my whole life from there, because I've used whatever I arrived at school, at work, and so forth, and then later in life, then implemented that in how I work. Both worked as an executive before I started my executive coaching practice, and then, of course, now with clients. So that's a little bit about me. Besides that, I think my son is correct when I asked him what to write about me in the book. And he said, well, you have to be honest. And I say, yeah, of course, that's my plan. Yeah, well, then you should write that you're crazy. And I'm like, what do you mean? Because you're the only person I know that can't be bored, which is actually true. So that's a little bit about who I am.
Oh, that is awesome. I like that you can't be bored, and that's exciting to me. I mean, it's talks about how you find energy in all the things that you do. And I want to ask you, why did you write this book? Why do you write about intrinsic motivation? I mean, as a consultant, as a corporate leader, as a business leader, been in the field for such a long time. You could have written about literally anything else. Why do you write about this topic?
Well, I think the background of the book is so I'm sort of a practitioner. I'm not an author. I love what I do, and I'm completely immersed in that.
Mm.
And why it became a book is actually I had a gazillion different methods that I've developed over the years together with clients and together with peers and people in my previous works and so forth. And then I was invited, this is a few years back, to give a keynote speech at one of my clients, McKinsey and Company. And McKinsey and Company is a magnificent place to actually develop methods, because it's one of the few really high pressure environments in business. It's almost like the Navy SEALs. And so people really need to push themselves to develop every day. Otherwise, you don't survive that environment. So, many of the methods that I have developed for the past 15 years or whatever has been developed in that environment. And I was asked to give a keynote speech within McKinsey about what I've learned over maybe 4,000 coaching sessions at that firm. And after my speech, some senior partners came to me and said, you have to write a book, because we know that all these methods actually work. And I think that's the only thing I can say about the book that sort of sets it a little bit apart, because everything in it is well proven.
Yeah.
Now, why intrinsic motivation? Because the intrinsic motivation is the unifying underlying theme for everything here. Because when you master intrinsic motivation, you will be able to basically find enjoyment in any type of tasks that you have to do. You will defy boredom. You will be able to learn things much faster than other people learn things. You will also be able to work toward any type of goal. And this is the thing that people don't, I think, understand with any type of goal fulfillment, is that goal will entail things that either don't interest you, or that you think are uncomfortable doing, and so forth. And if you cannot master yourself to think differently about these things, you will not pursue them. And if you pursue them, you will not pursue them very well. So intrinsic motivation, I think, is probably the most important life skill that you can master, how to unlock it at will. Besides perhaps logical thinking, logical problem solving. That's another sort of key topic, which is also related to intrinsic motivation.
Oh, that is fascinating. And now I think, Stefan, it's time for you to, if you could define for us, what is intrinsic motivation?
Well, intrinsic motivation is, let me say like this, okay? We have, as human beings, we have two major sets of instructions in us, okay, to safeguard ourselves and to, basically survive. One set of instruction we have, which is super strong and always present, is to conserve energy, to basically save energy, to keep things as is, okay? And the other little set of instructions we have is for expansion, for pushing ourselves out of our comfort zone and to learn new things, because that's also a very smart way to sort of make sure that we survive. We learn new things, okay? It's when we unlock that instruction for expansion that we sort of experience these moments of intrinsic motivation, where basically the reward we feel is the experience we get from the activity when we're in it. So it's basically our brain rewarding us for living up to one of the key survival strategies or instructions, which is expansion. But that is very weak, and you need to work actively to cultivate it. Now, what is the problem then? Well, the problem is that intrinsic motivation only happens when you're under some kind of pressure. pressure to perform. Okay.
Mhm.
So it's not a loosey-goosey feeling all the time, or maybe not most of the time. Okay. It's a feeling of being emotionally aroused. It's a feeling of being maybe a little bit of agitation. It's a little bit sliver of doubt, but you fundamentally feel alive when you're in there. Okay. But the sort of conserving instruction that we have in us, okay, basically don't like discomfort. Okay. So this leads to sort of a mental battle with yourself, and you need to make sure that this expansion instruction actually wins when you need
Mhm.
it. That's it.
And that has to be it sounds like it has to be a very intentional process, because you said it before, the instructions of conserving energy, doing, keeping things as is, are not only hardwired, but they are strong. And venturing ourselves into unknown territory where
Mm,
some exciting new things can happen,
mm.
that means, it sounds like it means that we have to override the as is, let's stay where we are kind of instructions, right?
Yeah. And this all goes back to one of your previous guests here, which is a friend of mine, Dr. John Arden, when he talks about brain health and the 5 levers for brain health. Being able to unlock your intrinsic motivation at least addresses 2 of these. Okay, one is daily learning or education, because when you're in the moment of intrinsic motivation, you're actually expanding yourself. So you're learning something new, and that's okay. Tick the box on brain health. Okay. But also, if you think about what really inspires intrinsic motivation, is when you think about the value you deliver to others
Mhm.
by how you perform a specific task. I think that is one of the easiest way to put yourself into the mode of intrinsic motivation. What happens now if I perform this podcast with Enrique in a really, really good way? What's the value for him? What's the value for the audience? It really makes the whole experience so much more exciting.
Yeah.
And that ties into his I think first element or fifth element, which is the social part of brain health. Okay,
Yeah.
to deliver value to others and to build relationships.
Yeah. We're going to talk, and I'm going to ask you later about how to unlock, um, sort of the power of that intrinsic motivation. But before that, I want to emphasize something that you just said, and it's written all over your book. And to me, I think it's one of the quotes that truly made me think a lot, right? And it is this: uh, the reward we feel is in the experience.
Mhm,
And I love that so much,
mhm,
because we are, for some reason, not only hardwired, but with this ambition for, to seek the goal, right? To seek
mhm,
the outcome, to only
mhm,
think about the outcome. And if we don't get that outcome in whatever amount of time we're thinking about getting it, we get bored, or we're not intrinsically motivated anymore
mhm,
to follow sort of the talk in the book, or we get disappointed or anxious. But to
mhm,
you, it is changing that model and thinking it's not just the outcome, it is the
mhm,
experience that you're going through. And I think that
mhm,
is so powerful. Stefan, can
mhm,
you develop on that idea
mhm,
of,
mhm,
the reward being the experience?
mhm. Well, yeah, I think that it is, if you want to put yourself into the mood of intrinsic motivation. Um, and this may sound like a little bit of a paradox, but the logic is pretty clear. For instance, a task that you normally don't like or whatever it is, you should always start by thinking about an exciting outcome. What if I perform these tasks differently or
Mm,
better or whatever? Okay, what would be a really exciting outcome that I actually could create by rethinking how I do it? Okay, that if you really come up with that, oh, that would really be inspiring if I could do that. Then you're forced to do the most important thing, and that is to think about the plan for how to do that.
mm,
Okay, and then when you start to perform the task, it is actually not the outcome that is most important. It is to follow the plan you have. And given that you have a plan, you automatically understand whether your plan is working or not, and what part of it is not working, so you can actually adjust how you do, okay? And that is what drives this experience of being in the present, being in the task, being there now. So the plan is actually the agent, okay? But in order to come up with a plan, you need to think about an outcome, because how can you make a plan if you don't know what you want to achieve? That's it.
So the outcomes, it's it's the goal, evidently, but what gives you that reward is not only thinking about that plan to get there,
Yeah.
implementing that plan and experiencing whatever you planned to get there. And again, to me, that's exciting, because it changes the focus. Yes, you have to think about the outcome, right? Because you want to go in certain direction.
Mhm.
But to me, that is changing the conversation of, it's not just the outcome. The outcome is where you want to go, is experiencing every moment, whether that's the success or the failure, the good
Mhm.
things or the bad things, the negative and the positive,
Mhm.
that you're going
Mhm.
through the journey to
Mhm.
get to that outcome. And that to me is incredibly powerful.
Mhm. I mean, and it also, Enrique, it also, you know, it doesn't matter, when I was an executive or whatever, when we talk about corporate goals or whatever, okay? So there is a fundamental question that people don't ask themselves, or corporate leaders don't ask themselves: why do we have goals? And the answer you get is that we need to fulfill them. But in my world, the primary goal of a goal is actually not 100% goal fulfillment. It is the learning you will make by pursuing the goal. Okay? Because for anything to be a goal, it needs to be beyond where we are today. Yeah. And for that, we need to do something differently in order to be in a different place. And in order to be smart about that, we need to have some kind of plan for how to pursue that change, or whatever it is. And it's by pursuing it then we learn and develop. So in my world, the primary goal of a goal is the learning you make by pursuing it, if you pursue it. There are too many goals that are set and defined that nobody ever pursues. Okay.
Now, let me ask you this, Stefan. How do we manage this idea of knowing about how to be intrinsically motivated, meaning knowing that the reward is in the experience and what I'm learning and who I am becoming through the journey, versus setting up the right kind of goals? And what I mean by that is, if you think about this from the onset, you think it's not just the goal, it's about the person I am becoming on the journey.
Mhm.
Should I set more difficult goals to learn more, to grow more? Should I set up easy goals so that I still acknowledge that is the journey, but I don't make it too difficult for me? So how do we manage that paradox of setting a goal, knowing that it's not just the goal, that is the experience that is your reward?
Well, I think I think a general rule of thumb is that if you don't get at least a sliver of anxiety when you think about the goal, whether it's achievable or not, you can't freak out. I mean,
Yeah.
nothing happens then. Okay, you just want to run away if it's overwhelming. But a sliver of doubt, a sliver of anxiety, if you don't have that, it's a useless goal. Okay, anything within your comfort zone. Anything within your comfort zone, even though it's a wet dream for most people to be in the comfort zone all the time, leads to basically nothing. Okay, it's just status quo. So this has to be something that is, outside your comfort zone. Okay. And, the way I use this myself, I listen to my body, I listen to my energy level. So obviously, if I'm in a space where I'm a little bit down and out, and maybe not feel like I'm on top of the world, um, I moderate how I set the goals or the outcomes, so it's sort of, it's a little bit of a stretch, but not too much. Okay. It's
Yeah.
basically based on where I am, the mental space I'm in that moment. When I feel really, really strong about myself, I can become ridiculously aspirational in how I set the goal. in my one thing, and this is, I think, should be a universal, something that teach kids in school, is the easiest way to put yourself into a mode of intrinsic motivation and to moderate, take into account your starting point, is to use the time element. Okay. So for how long something should take for you to do. I use this daily. So if I feel, let's say you and I had a coaching session, and I feel that I just have a sense I could up my game a little bit, in coaching, Enrique. I feel that, yeah, it's good, it's working, but I want to up my game. Okay. So, and we have this agenda today. You're going to talk about these topics. We have those desired, results from that, blah, 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 define. How can I up my game? Well, we have an hour and a half scheduled. What if I only had 30 minutes with Enrique? How would I then spend the time with him? And how would I then prep for that? Okay. That because in that process, when I start to think about that, I really start to realize how I do things normally with you. And I realized, oh my God, I can shift this, I can change this, I can rethink this, and I can do these things. Okay. And then when I perform, even though if we use an hour and a half, my performance and learning will be sort of sky high in that situation.
No, that is fantastic. Now, how do you know that you yourself, as the person intrinsically motivated about doing something, how do you know that you are actually intrinsically motivated? Is there a way to measure that, you as that person?
Yeah, I think it's sort of, it's a multifaceted, experience. My mentor for many years, Mihai Csikszentmihalyi, the researcher that came up with this, flow, the idea of flow, when you're in flow. There is an element of such a deep concentration in what you do. So you basically lose your own sort of self-awareness. You become one with the task. Okay. And you could also get a sense of, your time experience is distorted. Either you think that time has passed much faster than it has, or vice versa. But so it's like being one, and there's no distractions, for you. Okay, you don't think about other things. Okay, you're completely there in the experience. That's part, at least, some of the components in the experience, if that was the question you have.
Yeah, and I was actually thinking about some of these very famous scientists that we have biographies of, Albert Einstein being one of them. I remember reading about him that he would get in his studio for hours, if not days, not even eating. He was just like, and probably looking at the same page, for hours, just trying to resolve a mathematical or physical equation. And that's what you're talking about, being in that state where you are with the task, and even in the case of Einstein, everything else becomes relative. It cannot even be there anymore because you are so focused. And that to me is a powerful way to sort of to measure that component of intrinsic motivation. Now, Stefan, let me ask you this. You said this in the book. When somebody comes to you and says, "Oh, I had my work," or "I'm bored," I know you get really upset about that, right? Because you want people to think differently. But now, I want to ask you this. If it's possible for people to learn, to grow, to better themselves with intrinsic motivation, because they themselves are immersed in that process, what can organizations do to help people get to that level in an easier way? And I'm talking about maybe culture, I'm talking about leadership styles, whatever you want to call it, or whatever it is. How can organizations make it easier for people to find that component of intrinsic motivation?
Well, this is a topic probably for a one-day podcast to talk about it, because what makes it hard for people to enjoy their work has, in my experience, absolutely nothing to do with the work itself. It's ridiculous. Okay. I think a factor that is very important is how you talk about work. You know? And if you look in our culture, I mean, and this is such a paradox. I don't know how many billions of dollars companies have spent on what they call employee experience, making the work environment much more enjoyable, much more humane, or whatever it is, okay? And what happens, people basically becomes more and more dissatisfied, okay? So I think it's fair to say that changing the external environment has limited impact on people. The most important environment to change is the inner environment. It's how you allow yourself to think about yourself and who you want to become. Okay? That's the most important thing. You need to master that. And obviously, this is not easy. It's a job that needs to be done. And it's not easy because of what I said, this conserving energy instruction that we have. And that conserving energy instruction is equipped with a lot of safety and protective mechanisms. Okay. One is our negativity bias. Okay. So consider this. We are born with 5 basic emotions. Okay. Emotions govern our lives. We always meet everything we meet in the environment, first with emotions and then with reason. Okay. That's how we are built. There's no way to say, no, I'm not going to be emotional now. You always meet everything, okay? And then, if you're equipped to do so, you can snap out of your emotional intoxication and start to think, okay? Most people cannot do that, I'm sorry, but that's the thing. Now, we are born with 4 out of 5 basic emotions are negative. That's smart from an evolutionary standpoint, that we should be sort of more prone to negative thinking about what happens around us, because the environment we come from is much more dangerous than the environment that we live in right now. Okay, so it's smart to be a little bit suspicious. Okay, now consider this. We have, I don't know, different research shows different things, among 50 to 70,000 thoughts a day. Okay, 95% of those thoughts are not thoughts that I actively formulate myself, okay? They're automatic thinking, okay? And 80% of those thoughts are negative, okay? Now, is there a business case, if I now sound more like an executive, is there a business case to do something with an active job trying to sort of regulate your own negativity? Yes, there is. Because negativity basically kills. Okay. The first thing it kills when you're in a negative state of mind is your thinking skills. You become a worse problem solver. The second thing it kills, if you persist, with this negative outlook on yourself and what happens around you and interpretation of it, is it kills your immune system. So you become much more prone to be sick. Now I'm sort of interfering a little bit with my friend Dr. John Arden's area here. Okay? And the third thing, given this conserving energy instruction, okay, and the best way to conserve energy is to be energy efficient, yes? So the brain always strives to perfect the way it operates, okay? So if you allow your brain to think negative thoughts, it becomes super good at that. It becomes like a master, a champion of negative thinking. So the first thing I would do is with myself, is to tell myself, I will not allow negative thinking about anything. That's the first thing. If you talk about the working environment, I would make sure that leaders on all levels talk about work as something positive, something beautiful, Okay, but try to find an article today that talks about work as something beautiful. It's work is a pain in the ass. You have toxic bosses, of which I have not seen one toxic boss yet. Okay, and I worked with at least 4,000 or 5,000 leaders, and I've reviewed data for a couple of million, employee service or whatever it is. Okay, I've still not. I don't even know what a toxic boss is or toxic working environment is, but apparently someone does. Okay, but I have not seen it, and I think as a practitioner, I probably have seen more working environments than many other people. Okay, I don't see it. Okay, but that's part of the problem, how
Yeah.
we talk about work. Okay,
Yeah.
and I honestly think like this in the beginning when I was doing this podcast, um, I could sort of become a little bit speechless when I got certain questions because usually if a client asks me the same question, I just ask if he's an idiot or not. Okay. But the question is, so what if I don't love my job? Okay, is it the end of the world? Yeah, I mean, given that the amount of lifetime you spend at work, not pushing yourself to find what you do enjoyable and expanding yourself as a human being, I mean, that's just pure stupidity, isn't it?
Yeah. What I'm thinking, yeah, and what I'm thinking about is, I mean, again, you are turning a the spotlight of blame to from the outside, and not necessarily blame as in a culprit, but as in responsibility, from inside out to outside in, right? It is, what is it that I can do, to change
Mhm,
things, and grow out even out of what seemingly I could define as a toxic um,
mhm.
work environment. And I think that is so powerful, because
Yeah,
I,
excuse,
I always say that people, I always say this. I don't, some people say, and especially some business leaders say, people hate working. And I always respond to that. People don't hate work. People hate your job. People
mhm,
hate your organization. People don't hate working. It is through that work
mhm,
that they find an outlet for their
mhm,
creativity, for their
mhm,
creative expression, for their potential. If you
mhm,
make it so that they don't do that, it's not
mhm,
the act of working. It
mhm,
is the act of having to go to your office,
mhm,
to your company, what they
mhm.
end up disliking.
Mhm. No, but I'm sorry for almost interrupting you.
No,
No,
please.
and I mean I'm not. Um, I know that there are that there is a lot to ask. A lot of improvements you can make in the
Yeah.
work environment. A lot. I know. But my point is that you can do all these improvements. It will not change anything significantly unless individuals understand that paradise starts with my own thinking. That's
Yeah.
it. Okay.
Oh, and
No,
I love that.
I mean isn't that true? I
Oh,
saw this. Um, I saw this. I don't know. Just like a quote. This is like maybe 10, 15 years ago. I change my thoughts, and the world around me changes,
yeah.
which is true.
Yeah.
And the beautiful thing here also, and that's something I should have written much more about in the book. Um, um, and if I do anything more, developing more methods in a sort of an undeveloped area, for me, it would be about fantasizing,
Mm.
because the brain is the best, simulator in the world.
Mhm.
So when I think about something that I want to happen, the brain cannot discern between if this is really happening or it's only happening in my head. Okay, so you basically unlock the similar type of feelings you would have as this thing would really happen. Okay, I learned this when I spent some time with the FBI agents 25 years ago at the behavioral science unit, or now it's called behavioral analysis unit, because they discovered that one common denominator between serial killers was that they had this vivid imagination and fantasies about what they wanted to do when they carried out their extraordinary, gruesome crap. Okay,
Yeah.
but so in the beginning they were fantasizing about it, and the fantasy was enough. But after some time, the fantasy is not enough, and then you want to act it out. Now, if it works in a super bad area, okay, it also works in a really good area, which I know it does. So I would say,
Mhm.
people should be really careful about the thoughts they allow them to have about
Mhm.
themselves, about other people, and about their work, and try to cultivate a more, positive, you know, this is interesting, this is exciting, maybe I could do this. A little bit more like experimental, way of doing things.
Oh, I think that is so powerful. And in fact, I am a competitive runner, so I do a lot of running. And when I look at the lives of, uh, you know, elite athletes,
Mm,
they always tell you, always, that it's not, there are things that are not, they are not of their liking. They would choose to do something
mm,
else,
mm,
right? But not only are they mastering their own physical bodies, but what they have mastered is the way they think about things, right?
mm,
And they have mastered the thoughts that they have in their minds when they are both training and in the
mm,
actual competition.
mm,
They don't allow themselves to doubt of what they're doing. They see it as an experience. They find the reward in the experience. But in addition to that,
mm,
when a negative thought which happens to them pops up in their minds, they reframe it, right? They
mm,
think about it
mm,
differently, because it's going to happen, right? You're going to have those negative thoughts, but they
mm,
think about that differently. And that
mm,
power of intrinsic motivation to
mm,
keep pushing, I think, is just so powerful. And I appreciate you not only writing about it, Stefan, but sharing with us as well.
mm,
As we get closer to wrap up our conversation, I want to ask you one last question, and I evidently don't want to oversimplify um, what you have written about and your research. What, besides getting the book, so for everybody, Intrinsic
mm.
Motivation, learn to love your work and succeed as never before. Besides buying your book, what could be a second great step for people to leverage, perhaps, the power of their intrinsic motivations? What would be one thing that you would want them to do right now?
Uh, well, besides having some kind of mechanics in place where you think about the upcoming week, identifying moments where you really want to expand yourself a little bit, to get into this, train a little bit on being intrinsically motivated. Obviously, for the things that you enjoy, you don't have to do that because you enjoy them. Eventually you might need to do it with them too, because if you don't keep on stretching yourself, you're going to
Mm,
find these things boring. So there's something about sort of a weekly, daily infrastructure, mechanical thing, thinking about your days and creating expectations and outcomes and a little bit of a plan for at least one or two things every day. But I think one of the most powerful things you should do is to find a buddy,
mm,
someone that also wants to get more potential out of him or herself, um, reach whatever goals, enjoy more, have a greater work satisfaction, life satisfaction, whatnot, and then meet on a weekly basis, and talk through the past week. How was the past week? What did I learn about myself? What did I achieve, and so forth? And then think ahead. And if there is anything there in the upcoming week that I might struggle with, use the body as a sounding board, for that.
mm.
I think that is very, very powerful. It's also very organic. It's not
Yeah.
too processed. It's like, okay, Enrique, you and I, why don't we sort of have a check-in, every Friday at 2:30, and we talk about the past week. What stood out there in a positive way, maybe a less positive way. Okay, how can I think about that, and then look ahead. Super simple.
Love that. Stefan, thank you so much for being
Mm,
part of this Hacking It Our Life Chat series, for coming and sharing your insights. I know 45 minutes is such a short time to talk about so much
mm,
goodness, but I encourage everybody tuning in live right now or watching the replay. Please go to Amazon or whatever platform you use to buy your books and get the book by Stefan, Intrinsic Motivation. It's fascinating. And Stefan, once again, thank you so much for being here and for sharing some of these nuggets with me and, of course, with the community. Thank you.
Thank you, Enrique. Pleasure.
Thank you. And thank you, everybody. I will see you soon in our upcoming events or Hacking HR Life Chat series or any of the many things that we're putting together for you. Thank you so much.